source for live meetings. The Government Channel presents
Welcome to Straightforward Conversation with Gary Hunter. My guest this evening is Jim Andrick, Nelsonville City Manager. Jim is a graduate of Parkersburg Community College with a degree in computer science, a graduate of Ohio University with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, and has done some graduate work in public administration with Ohio University. He spent 9 years in the Air Force working as a consulting engineer in both electrical and civil engineering, and prior to becoming Nelsonville City Manager, Jim served as Millersburg Village Administrator. Today's topic is just simply the City of Nelsonville. Good evening, Jim.
Good evening, Gary.
Jim, I kept the topic broad as the City of Nelsonville because I think there's a lot of exciting things going on up there at Nelsonville tonight, and wanted to just kind of keep the topic wide open so we can just reach into anything that you might want to talk about that's going on in Nelsonville. But to get the conversation kind of up and rolling a little bit, one of the biggest things that Nelsonville has done in the last couple of years, of course, is to change their form of government. And I'd like to just have you start off by telling our audience a little bit about what happened and what resulted in changing the form of government to a charter form of government.
Anytime that a city undergoes something as significant as change of a government, people have to get pretty well fed up with what happens. You have some cities where the statutory form of government works fine. People are looking forward. Logan would be a good example of a small city about our size that their mayor and their service director seem to want to look forward and plan for the future and not let that interfere with the political machinations that may go on. From what I've been told, not living here at the time, I guess politics became the driving force in what was going to happen in Nelsonville, and that rather than doing things that were right, things were done on the basis of, I want to get elected. Well, a city can't survive for long that way. And what eventually happened was the city went insolvent. They bounced a check. There wasn't good track kept on the money. People pretty well got fed up. A charter commission was formed. They created a charter, they forced it onto the ballot, and they voted it in. And they eliminated the statutory form of government, went to, under the home rule, went to a charter form of government, the council, city manager form of government.
And what are some of the major changes that occurred as far as the way the government operates from the statutory form of government to the charter form that Nelsonville chose to enact? I think we have a city manager, for instance, your position, which is not prescribed or authorized in the statutory form of government.
Right. In your statutory form, you have an elected mayor, an elected city council. Ordinances or actions taken by city council can be vetoed by the mayor, and the mayor runs the administrative side, and council legislates and appropriates. Under our charter, and charters may differ from city to city as long as they follow general rules that are of conduct. Under our charter, the city council is the ruling body. I work for council. I don't have any veto power over what they do. When council makes an ordinance, passes some form of legislation, I have no choice but to enact the provisions of it. However, I'm the chief executive and chief administrative officer of the city. I'm the legal contracting authority. By our charter, I'm the person in charge of all personnel matters. Council's prevented from interfering in personnel matters in our city. So what's happened is things that have to happen for the city can happen now without fear of who's going to get elected and who's not going to get elected, because it's a body of 7 members making a decision, hopefully for the good of the city, and then I just carry out the decisions and I try to do the right things, and I can make recommendations based on this is what I think should happen, even if it's not popular.
It's pretty much common knowledge that the financial situation of Nelsonville has pretty much drastically improved in the last couple of years. Would you attribute that to primarily a fair amount of that to the changing in the form of government?
In the last year and a half that I've been here, there've been majority on council that were progressive, forward-thinking people. They wanted to do the right thing for the city. Obviously, I think they were doing the right thing because a lot of things they did was what I wanted to do. I made certain recommendations. We did them. We didn't always do the popular thing. It had been over 15 years since the water and sewer rates had been raised. You can't operate on prices from 15 years ago. Anybody that does business knows that. We reached the point that we couldn't meet our obligations in the sewer fund. We couldn't meet all the debts that had to be paid. So in February of last year, the council passed a 20% raise on the sewer rates, and I instituted a 20% raise on the water rates. It wasn't popular, but once the full explanation was out there, in general, people understood that we have to do business. We have to run a city like a business. We can't just be a charity group because sooner or later the money runs out. We've done other things to try to streamline our operations and to keep control of where the money went. For example, we didn't pave any streets last year. Now this year we'll be able to take care of some problems because we've managed to go from being a pauper and being in serious problem. If we had anything came up, we were going to be bankrupt. We couldn't meet any emergency that came up. Well, now, at the end of '96, we carried over $1.4 million in unencumbered balance. That's our emergency fund now. It's a large percentage of our budget, but as your total operating budget gets smaller, you have to carry over a higher percentage for it to be significant. For example, the state of Ohio carries about 3 to 5% for a rainy day fund, but that's 3 to 5% of a $50 to $60 billion budget. 1.4 million will get us by if something bad happens, but we don't need to spend that now. We need to keep it back. That money will make money for us, and what we'll do is operate 97 for what we make in 97. My appropriations that I proposed to council showed that we're going to operate within what we make in this year, but I stayed conservative on both estimates. I estimated low on what we were going to make and estimated high on what we were going to spend. Come about the 1st of July, we'll be able to go back and look and say that we've made more money than what we expected and we've spent less, so we can undertake more projects during the last half of summer based on the fact that we've done better on the first half of the year. This is how we're going to be a conservative government, but do the right things. We don't have to amass any more money. Our goal now is to have a zero balance for the year, but keep what we've got. And now we can start looking towards doing capital improvements that need to be done.
Do you think, it sounds like you believe there should be ongoing planning going on in the city rather than just day-to-day operations of the city?
Right. Crisis management won't get you ahead. I've prepared a 5-year capital improvements plan for the city that council has that they've been reviewing. With the addition of Steve Cox as the city auditor, I appointed him to fulfill the unexpired term of the previous auditor who resigned. Mr. Cox does an excellent job as auditor. Our reports are immediate, they're accurate. He can tell me at any given time where we're at and what we're doing. With that information, I'm in a position now to make some long-range planning. So with that, we've got this 5-year plan. It shows that we're putting several $1 million back into the city this year. Now, part of that is grant money. I've actively pursued that with the number of grants, and $1.1 million is the amount of grant money that's going back into the city in '97. We've got several projects that we've got online to be done. Every year we're hoping to get more money. That's what everybody wants, is to get the grants. As we can get our grants, that's what we'll use our money for. If we can't get grants, we'll live with what we've got. But one way or another, we're going to get by with what we've got because that's what we have to do. And with careful planning and with planning for the future, we can make this work in Nelsonville with what we've got.
Very good. Stay tuned. Jim and I'll be back after this commercial break. Welcome back to Straightforward Conversation. My guest this evening is Jim Andrix, Nelsonville City Manager. Jim, there's an old saying, and I hope I get it right here instead of getting it backwards, that if it's not broke, don't fix it. And it's been applied a lot of times in cities in relation to their infrastructures. Would you say that that's been the philosophy of Nelsonville in the past?
That's a good philosophy in general. Unfortunately, in Nelsonville, it's broke. We have constant water leaks. At any time you want to pick, there's water leaking out of our water system someplace. We have sewer lines that the infiltration continues on. All summer long, we had 2 men doing nothing but trying to eliminate infiltration from our sewer system. If you drive through Nelsonville, you've seen our streets. We have a real problem with our infrastructure. It appears that the infrastructure was ignored for too long for the water and sewer. and now we're paying for it. Somehow we've got to come to a point where we're going to start replacing some of these faulty water lines. We're going to have to start replacing some of the bad sewers and so on. And then in the capital improvements budget for 1997, we've got $25,000 to start with to start replacing water lines. We've got to do something, because as time goes by, the problem's only going to get worse. When it gets to the point that you have to start trying to find a smaller clamp to fit between two previous repair clamps on a water line, you know it's time to replace the water line. We have water lines that get repaired every month, and that's not acceptable. Unfortunately, we don't have the millions of dollars that would require to replace all the water lines in town. So what we'll have to do is repair what we can, replace the ones that are the worst, and we'll have to survive until something big comes along. If we get a big grant, then we'll do what we can with it. Barring that, we'll replace what we can afford.
Do you think that it's important to go back and inventory the condition of the lines? You said a lot of them are broken, but before you became city manager, was there any good records up there about where the broken water lines were?
Where the repairs are and so on is not a very good record-keeping system for the long-term past. The only records that I think we've got on where the water breaks were and so on were the little repair tags that the ladies in the water office made for the men. The men have worked hard. They've made a map of where they think the water lines are now. We had a donation of about, well, there were 10 complete computer systems and some other miscellaneous hardware. These were older systems, 286s and 386s, that were donated to us. Our benefactor asked to remain anonymous. Used machines, but we've set one up now to go out to the city garage. And we've set up a database that they can start logging in where did the water line break? What size was the water line when you dug it up, and where was it? So we can start keeping track. Over the course of time, we'll be able to amass enough data that we can make the best use of our money. Right now we have to work on where do we think the most number of leaks were, and we go back and we look through the repair tags and so on to come up with what's given us the most grief. And like I say, the men work all the time, and they work hard to get these water leaks repaired, and they have a pretty good idea of what's broken recently.
Is there another factor in the overall thought process of how you rank things to be fixed? Is that the EPA?
Oh yeah, the EPA always figures into everything. For example, we're doing the Sylvania Avenue sewer project. That wouldn't necessarily have been our first pick on what we're going to spend the $500,000 on, but we didn't have a choice. EPA said we would serve that area, and so we're going to serve it. We don't have a choice, otherwise we'd have got struck with some huge fine. Athens has been on the poor side of the tyrannical practices of EPA on occasion, and we just can't afford to be on that end of it, so we're doing what we have to on that. Now, for good planning, we're trying to make the best use of the dollars that we can, but EPA always figures into it. When they blow into town and require us to do something, we have no choice. For example, on our water system, just after I came to town, they handed me findings and orders on our water system and declared that there were certain items that we just had to do. They were so tearing bad that these items that they couldn't stand it. We were going to be hit with huge fines if we didn't take care of them. One of these items, they said that our water wells had to be raised 3 feet above the 100-year floodplain. End of story. They said, we will do that. Well, I'd been out and I asked the man, I said, have you been to see our wells? Well, yes, I have. Because when I went out and looked at the wells, they were quite a ways up in the air, the well platform is, and you had to climb a ladder to get up to them. But he insisted that this was something that had to happen. So we spent several $1,000s and had surveyors go back to the 1929 benchmarks, and they ran them out there to our well field. And it turned out that our wells were already 8 feet above the 100-year floodplain. I called EPA and asked them about that, and they said, oh, well, we looked at the map and it didn't look that way. Now, I asked them, $3,000 isn't a lot of money, but it's more than we can afford to just throw away.
Sure.
Particularly when we're in the middle of a financial crisis. Are they going to give us back $3,000? Well, of course they're not. This is what I don't consider acceptable. We're doing what we can. I believe in being clean. I don't think we should pollute. We need to do what we can to keep things right. We want to provide clean water to our customers. The sewage that comes from our customers, we want to clean it before and produce clean effluent that goes out. But for somebody to blow in and just arbitrarily make decisions and wave their hands in the air and assume that this has to be done or else something terrible is going to happen, and decide that they're going to fine us if we don't toe the mark, and then turn out they didn't really know what they were talking about. I'm a registered professional engineer in this state, and I find it appalling that some young person can go to EPA and be handed a book, and they can just come down and insist that I throw away all good engineering practice and common sense and do any little thing that they think might be necessary. So, yes, the EPA enters into it. The EPA has good points. I'm not trying to say they don't. I'm just saying I'd like to see some kind of a brake put on their power. Nobody should have unrestricted power. You know, the IRS and EPA are two perfect examples of that.
And I think so many times the public doesn't realize that the EPA has the ability to levy quite astronomical fines, of up to $25,000 a day in some cases. And you're not just dealing, in many cases, with just the Ohio EPA, but there's also a federal EPA, and in some cases you have to deal with too, I assume, up there.
That's correct. You know, anything that starts from Ohio EPA goes on up. They're controlled to a certain extent by the federal EPA and so on. Athens is a good case in point. Athens discovered a problem and reported a problem that they discovered, and then the EPA fined the city of Athens, I believe it was $2 million that they're trying to collect off the city of Athens, because they tried to do the right thing. That's not acceptable. If I discover a problem and I report it to the EPA because I'm trying to do the right thing, it shows that we're trying to do the right thing. Why come back and try to levy some huge amount off of us? You know, Athens, the city is in Athens County, and taking $2 million out of this city hurts everybody. It doesn't just hurt the city of Athens.
I agree with you. Stay tuned. Jim and I will be back after this commercial break. Welcome back to Straightforward Conversation. My guest this evening is Jim Andrick, Nelsonville City Manager. Jim, in the last segment that we're going to have here tonight, I want to direct you towards a couple more topics I want to talk about. One I want to start off with is annexations. Nelsonville, if you will, is leading the way in Athens County on annexations. Tell me whether you think that's been beneficial to Nelsonville and why you, as a city, have chosen the last 2 years to aggressively pursue adding territory to the city of Nelsonville.
You know, a city has to either be progressive and expand, or it's going to decay and die. There is no standing still. You have to try to move forward in order just to stay in the same place. Nelsonville is in a situation where we've run out of housing areas. So if somebody wanted to come in and build a new housing development, there wouldn't be a good place within the city to do it. Now, the other thing to look at is, where do we provide services and what is the possible income base? You know, the city of Nelsonville has annexed the Hocking College and Tri-County Vocational School. That's netting us in the neighborhood of $250,000 a year in income taxes. That area that was annexed was approximately 509 acres, give or take, and that represents quite a large area of future expansion and development. Another place that we annexed was the site of the four-county jail that was coming in. We're providing water and sewer there. That's contiguous to the city, and by that we're gaining the fact that not only are we gaining jobs and the construction there, but we're also gaining the fact that that four-county jail is going to be within the city of Nelsonville, and we're already trying to figure out ways to use that to our best advantage. I believe there are services that our police department will be able to provide to the jail. In return, there are services that we think the jail can provide for us. We're working right now on an annexation along State Route 78, which will include the Nelsonville York City Schools, the new high school area. That should be resolved fairly soon. That's an area that we're already providing water to. As we're building our Sylvania Avenue project, we're going to provide sewer out in that area also if this annexation is done. That also provides us an expansion of the city. It also provides us the occasion where we can take in an income source to help defray the cost of constructing a sewer in that area. We have to look at the fact that since we're providing a service over there, that Sylvania Avenue sewer, the money for that has to come from someplace. By annexing this school, that's giving us an offsetting income source for that. There are other areas that we've looked at for expansion and annexation. Obviously, in any case, the property owners that live there are going to have the controlling vote on what happens. But I believe that the benefits of being in the city outweigh any of the liabilities of being in the city. In Nelsonville, we're trying to be progressive, and we're trying to protect people's property rights as we go. As you know, we had a big, last year we had a big roundup of trash in the city. We've tried to make the city much more presentable, make it a better place to live. And so I think we're providing better services now for the people that live in the city. You know, we've tripled the size of our police force in the last year and a half. So these benefits that we're giving them, the immediate police response, the fire response, lower water and sewer rates for being in the city, these are the benefits that we offer. In return, we're getting a larger income base off of it.
So it's kind of a mutual benefit to both the area that's brought in plus the city of Nelsonville.
Oh yeah, any business deal has to benefit everybody or else it's never going to go through. And that's what we try to show in an annexation, is that people gain a benefit from being in the city, and of course we gain the benefit of getting a bigger income base.
As I drive along Canal Street in Nelsonville, I notice at least 10, maybe 15 new businesses along that corridor of the city of Nelsonville. What do you attribute that to?
I think that there are actually two prongs of that. One is we're trying to be pro-business. When somebody comes to Nelsonville to want to open a business, provide jobs in our community and so on, we'll do whatever we can to assist them in it. We try in every measure not to be repressive towards them, to show them that we're trying to make it right for them in Nelsonville. Secondly, we're trying to provide good government in Nelsonville. And I think most people around here can see a significant difference in the way business is done in Nelsonville now and the way it might have been done in the past. We try to present a professional appearance, we try to act professionally, we try to treat people right. And I think that when you have good government leads to enhanced business atmosphere. And it seems to be playing out that way in Nelsonville.
It certainly does. Zoning, where do you stand on that issue?
I believe zoning is something that should happen to help people protect their property rights. Right now in Nelsonville, we don't really have what you'd call a zoning. If you came to Nelsonville and built a $250,000 house, I could buy the property next to you and build a boiler shop or a hog farm or whatever, and that's and really detract from your property value. The zoning that we're working on is not a very restrictive type of zoning. What we want to do is set up areas that we designate. This is what our plan for the future is in this area. Of course, right now it's so homogeneous of the usage. We need to make it so that your property values aren't going to deteriorate from what your neighbors do. I don't really care about what you do on your property as long as you leave everybody else alone. But the key is, what are you doing to infringe on somebody else's rights? And that's where the question always comes in, is where should the zoning stop and where does property rights begin? And we're trying to not be any repressive. We're trying to make zoning a positive atmosphere of having, we want to have single-family areas. In Nelsonville, we have quite a large student population from the Hocking College, and we need a lot of student housing for that. We can't do away with that, but we do need to have areas set aside for it that can't be infringed on by other types of businesses and commercial or industrial enterprises. So what we need to do is just have a plan for what we're going to do. You know, we're not going to take anybody's property away from them right now and turn it into something else. Obviously that wouldn't be right, and I don't believe it'd be constitutional. What we want to do is set up a plan so that if it ever gets changed to something else, then it stays that way.
Very good. We only have a few minutes left, and in those few minutes I'd like you to address two questions for me very quickly in about 30 seconds. One is, how do you feel about televising Nelsonville City Council meetings? And the second question is, give me your top 2 or 3 problems facing Nelsonville in the next year.
Well, I think putting Nelsonville City Council meetings on television is one of the best things that's happened in our government since I've been there. People in Nelsonville have a right to see what goes on. They need to know what their government is doing for them. They need to be able to make informed choices, and they need to be able to make informed decisions and have informed opinions of what's happening. So many times in the past, people would call me and they would have heard a third-hand account of something that might have happened at council meeting, and it would take half the conversation to ensure them that no, that in fact wasn't what was said. Well, now it's on television. It's as easy as turning on the TV and they can see what goes on at council meeting, and now they know who said what. And I believe that's a very positive. It gets more people involved in government, and I think it makes myself and all the council persons more accountable for what they do and say. The things that might happen in Nelsonville here in the next couple of years, we've got to replace our infrastructure, and that's our biggest problem to overcome.
Thank you, Jim. This has been a very interesting discussion. I think I may have to have you back to continue it in the future to see where we are in the next 6 months or something like that. This has been Straightforward Conversation with Gary Hunter. My guest this evening has been Jim Andrick, the Nelsonville City Manager.